We're here today with Santa Ana's own authors. And so we have Bill Kirkby, who is a teacher, and I'm actually going to go through their bios in a second, and Ernesto Cisneros and Danielle Crosby Davidson. And so there's three of us tonight, and we're going to have a half an hour to discuss their books. What I'd like to do is I'd like to begin by sharing my screen, and I'm going to read a quick bio on each of these authors. I'll start with Bill Kirkby. Bill Kirkby is originally from the East Coast, so that makes him a little different than most Californians. He has a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Central Connecticut State University, a Master's of Science from the University of Bridgeport, and a Master's of Science from California State University. He's been teaching in the Santa Ana Unified School District for 26 years, and he has taught all levels of school, and mostly English. And so, that brings me to Ernesto. Ernesto Cisneros is an award-winning author of F-Brain Divided. He was born and raised in Santa Ana, California, where he still teaches. As an author, he believes in providing today's youth with an honest depiction of characters with whom they can identify. F-Brain Divided is the winner of a California Independent Booksellers Alliance with a Golden Poppy Award for Best Middle Grade Book of 2020. It is also named Kirkus Best Middle Grade Book of 2020, Charlotte Huck Recommended Book. It's NPR's Best Books of 2020 list. It's also an ALA Book List Top 10 First Novels for Youth in 2020. It's also on the 2020 Project Lit selection. It's a Texas Bluebonnet Award Master List for 2020, Chicago Public Library's Best of the Best Books of 2020, and finally, the New York Library Best Books for Kids 2020. And we also have today Danielle Crosby Davidson, who has been a teacher and a theater director for 17 years. She received her bachelor's degree in social science from ASU, her master's in education from the University of Phoenix, and her EDD in organizational change and leadership from the University of Southern California. Danielle has written and directed a play called Pride and Prejudice, a theatrical production adapted from the original novel by Jane Austen. Danielle's dissertation was entitled, "What Do Teachers Know About Gifted Students?" Her research was focused on teachers' ability to know the characteristics of giftedness. And so, without further ado, I'd like to begin the discussion today by letting the authors talk about a little bit about their books and ask them, what inspired them to write their books. So starting with Bill Kirkby. Bill, can you tell us a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write it?
Okay, yeah. I want to first congratulate Ernesto and Danielle on being authors and playwrights, and I want to thank Jason for putting this all together. Well, I started off, I had a dog, a chocolate lab. He was a very special animal. He was a therapy dog, and I brought him to Children's Hospital, Chalk. He sat with the kids, and he was a very special dog. They loved him, and he was always wagging his tail. He was always so smart. He would carry everything in his mouth, which is like what all chocolate labs or what all Labradors do. He would go to the store. He'd come home with a bag in his mouth with whatever I needed. So he was very special. It was almost like we communicated together. So this is how I got the idea for my original book, which is called Titan and The Adventures of Titan the Chocolate Lab, Titan and His Multicultural Friends. I was trying to teach children a lesson about life through animals, through dogs. And the book starts out with introducing Titan and all his different friends through rhyming, such as Dora from Nextora, Pete from up the street, Cheech, who lives by the beach, Shantae, who lives down the way. So it does have a rhyming aspect to it. And then I wrote about how all dogs, are all the same. They love to play fetch. They love to swim. They love to dig. And sometimes they have to pee and poop, which is kind of a funny thing. But they're all different. They're different breeds. They act different. But in the end, they're all the same. And it was a message I was trying to teach to children about how we as humans, we're different colors, we're different nationalities, but in the end, we're all humans, and we are all the same. And race doesn't matter. So that was the message that I was trying to teach children. I'm working on some other books too in the series about Titan in his first day of school. Titan goes to the doctor, things like that. But they're all the books have a message to children that teaches them an important lesson in life. So, but I got the inspiration for the book from just the dog, and it just, I'm a creative person, so the creative aspect in my mind just started flowing, and I started saying, wow, it would be kind of good to write a book. And I had the idea for a while, and I guess we as authors, we probably all have these ideas, and it just takes a little kick in the butt to sit down and write the book. So that's what I did, and I produced the book, and it's now for sale on Kindle, Amazon Kindle, The Adventures of Titan, and The Chocolate Lab and His Multicultural Friends. So,
will your next book also deal with the multicultural aspect that your first book dealt with?
Well, the first book was Titan and His Multicultural Friends, and that was the one that taught the message about how we're all different, but in the end, we're all the same. So the next one is going to teach children about, the first day of school, how to deal with the first day of school through dogs. Titan goes to the doctor, how children have to go to the doctor and they're scared, and how, Titan goes to the doctor and they just show him at the doctor's office dealing with the same issues that children deal with, but how they get through it and how they relate to it. So.
All right. Thanks, Bill, for introducing us to your book. I'm going to move over to Ernesto and ask him to share a little bit about his book now, F-Brain Divided. Ernesto, can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea of writing the book and what your creative process was behind it? Oh, you're on mute. It's all right.
All right. Yeah, so F-Brain Divided came about in 2016. It was during the presidential elections when hate was given a national platform, and somehow it became socially acceptable to just share the dislike of other people. And I knew that a lot of my students were listening, and they were hearing these things. And I know as a child, I remember growing up and feeling a sense of disentitlement and just kind of internalizing all the negativity that you hear. So I wanted to write a book that was going to affirm and celebrate the Latino culture. And then during 2016, I had some of my students who had parents that were being taken away by ICE. And so, their lives were being devastated, and I wanted to kind of help the kids navigate through these times. And so that's kind of how F-Brain Divided was born. For any teachers that are out there watching, I love to always show the cover. There's something I want to kind of point out. Right now, especially, we're having some very difficult times, especially because of the pandemic. And we have kids who don't turn on their cameras. We have kids that are going through different things, and sometimes as teachers, we see kids this way. But I just want to remind educators out there that if you really take the time to find out what's going on with the kids' lives, sometimes we find out that there's a lot more going on. So I always keep this copy of this book, and I keep it upside down for myself. It's like my own little personal reminder. But again, it's just I really wanted to write a book featuring and highlighting Latinos, because I think it's really important that students see themselves in the books that we write. I think it's really easy for people to hate people they're not familiar with. It's a lot more difficult to hate people you know. And so I know you guys have heard the term window and mirror books. I wanted to take it a step further. I kind of like to classify F-Brain Divided as an open garage book, because I pretty much open up the garage and let everybody come into my house and see the mess, see the everything. And I just wanted to showcase and highlight what a real Latino family looks like, and to invite people to get to know us, and for kids to actually see themselves on the page too. So that's how that one kind of came about.
I also noticed I read the book, and there's a lot of different topics in there, and so you talked about ICE, but there's just normal kid relationships at school, boys and girls, and friends, and fighting with friends, and in what way did teaching in Santa Ana inspire some of the things that you wrote in the book?
Well, it's funny because my teaching life and my writing life all came together. The cover is actually based on Pio Pico Elementary. This is the apartment. It's actually across the street right there, and the same for rent sign that you'll still find today. I passed by there last week, and I know it's still there. So I wanted the kids to see themselves written about. So there's tons of Easter eggs. There's teachers that they're going to come across. There's going to be people, if you have a certain food truck that you like to go to, you just might see some of the characters in the book. So I try to make it as fun for the kids as possible.
I love it. I love the fact that because you're from Santa Ana, and because you speak the language as well, and you are a Latinx author, the kids can relate to you, and you can relate to the kids because you're using their language. You're using the language of Santa Ana, not just Spanish, but the language of Santa Ana. It was great to read. I loved reading it.
I actually learned how to ride a bike and how to drive in the same place where I work, back when it used to be Montgomery Ward's parking lot. So I work exactly where I grew up. I mean, it's kind of strange.
That's great.
Memories throughout the parking lots. I can tell you, oh yeah, I fell down right there. That I almost hit the light post backing up over here. This is where I learned how to parallel park. So it's kind of cool.
That's great. Okay, Ernesto, we're going to come back to you and talk a little bit more about your book in a minute after we talk to Danielle. So, Danielle, I have the same question for you. You've written a play, and your dissertation, you told me earlier you might want to focus a little more on the play. So tell us about your process and your inspiration for writing the play.
Absolutely. I have had, if in the 1940s, 1930s, one of my favorite shows on TV or wherever was Pride and Prejudice. And as I was, I don't know, probably, I definitely weren't living in the 1940s to say I'm not that old, but I like to go back and see all these black and white, beautiful photographs and all those sort of thing. However, as I grew up and as I became still enamored with this Pride and Prejudice concept, I realized that what I was watching on TV was a bunch of like feather-headed women who were just running around in circles and not really understanding what needed to be. And there was the one person, Jane, who's the one that is, like one of the people who are able to just to deal with anything that they're going to go through. But generally speaking, it was just a mess as far as who women were at that time. And so what I did was I went back and I realized it was just a little bit past the Napoleonic Wars. A lot of men died on the battlefields, not just by Napoleon, but by many others. And that left the women alone. And there was sort of a concept that there's no way that all these women would have survived if they had been these feather-headed, running around, not knowing what to do. So I did some more research, and even though the play still has humor in it, my research made them a lot stronger women on stage. And I wanted that to be seen in a lot of ways. So that was really what started that.
So now I also saw that you were a theater director. Were you able to have your kids perform that play?
Yes. So we did. I got everybody together. We had when I was living in Arizona, and we had it was a fantastic place to be. We had a great theater and it was just, we had, I don't know, it was like 20 shows in 10 years. And so when we got to this point, I said, this is what I want to do. And this is going to just be my pièce de résistance. And so that's what I did. And I wanted that happen. And we just had, I have wonderful pictures to show and at some point in time, but it really, I was so proud. And it was really hard because I always used to be in my productions. Like I would be sort of a walkthrough or whatever, but this one, I wanted it to be like I was sitting watching it like it was TV. So.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to kind of ask all of you a little bit about your process for when you sit down and you start writing your works of art. And so I'll kind of just go, I'll go back to you, Bill, and ask you what your process is. And then we'll move on. When you're finished, we'll move on to Ernesto and Danielle. But then feel free to ask each other questions as you're, talking about your process, because there's a lot of authors out there that, they like to write, but they're not quite sure how to finish. And after they finish, they're not quite sure how to get it published. And so you guys can talk about that as well. So Bill?
Well, I'd like to say that first off, no idea is too ridiculous. Any idea is worth it. You just have to go with it. And for myself, I was writing a children's book, so I wanted it to be, bright and colorful. And I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Maybe I can give a couple of pictures of the book. Let's see. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's working. It's trying to spin. Yeah. We see the Adventures of Chocolate. The file name.
Up here it comes. So I wanted to make sure that it was the pictures that were going to be the thing with this book. And with children's book, it's all about pictures.
Bill, we don't see the pictures, just so you know.
All right. Yeah.
No, that's okay.
I know. I hear you. Yeah. Anyway, so all right, I'm gonna stop sharing. So, but it was the pictures that were most important for me, because with children's books, they had to be, bright, colorful pictures. And it wasn't really about the words, but the message that I wanted to teach was to children was about, equality, and about that we're all the same. And just like Ernesto, it was issues of the day that kind of had me inspired to write this book and to teach children about the message that I wanted to teach them. And the same with Ernesto about the message that he wanted to teach. So
what's the age range, Bill?
The age range is, it's 6 to 12.
Oh, okay.
But it depends on where you live and from.
Well, I still read lots of picture books
in the city. Have a hard time reading, and stuff like that. So it goes a little older for the inner city, but from age 2 on up. So, and even as adults, we enjoy 2-sentence page children's books that are very colorful. Yeah. I wish I could share the screen. So.
Well, we can come.
Oh, here it is. Wait, here.
Okay.
It is.
All right.
Got it. Yeah. Can you see it?
Yes. There you go.
So there's, it was very colorful, and this is a true picture of Titan that I got, colorized. There's Dora from next Dora.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pete from up the street. Shantae from down the way. So they're, bright and colorful and rhyming. So.
How fun. That's great.
Yeah.
Good. So, Ernesto, what is your what does your process look like when you're sitting down to write? What do you do?
Here, I'm going to share an image with you.
Okay.
It's a quote from Dr. Seuss that kind of explains how my philosophy, I suppose. Sometimes you will never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. And that's pretty much my formula for writing. I just go into my mind and I think about all the memories I have as a teacher, as a child, as a kid. That's why I wrote about Santa Ana, because all the best memories I have are like, going to Salvador Park and having my quarter there so I can go to the pool with my friends. And then hiding out in the bathroom so we don't have to pay, when they kick everybody out and they bring the next batch in, hiding in there so that you can go ahead and, stay there all day for a quarter. Things like that. So I use my friends. I have a sign on my door in my classroom that says, "Careful what you say or do, because you just might end up in one of my books." So I write about things I care about. I mean, that, like Bill, that's exactly what it is. I have a cat now, and I love my cat. I'm thinking about writing a cat book too. And so you write about things that you're passionate about, and you write for that 12-year-old version of yourself when you were a kid too. I never saw myself in a book, and I wish when I was a kid, I wish I would have had just be able to see a book about a kid from Santa Ana. I mean, that would have just been so. I would have been such an avid reader if I had had books like that.
So one of the viewers is watching right now. And I don't know if they're asking it, which any of you, but maybe all of you can answer the question. Have your students read your books? And if so, what do they think about them?
Yeah, I just typed in the message. Yeah, my students have read my book. Of course, they haven't bought it, but I shared it with all my classes, and they all love it. They love, and what they comment on first is the pictures. They love the pictures, and I've shown them a real picture of my dog and the cartoon picture of the dog, and they think it's the coolest thing ever. And they do totally get the message that it's trying to teach. Without me trying to teach them, do you understand that? And they're like, oh yeah, that we're all the same, and it's like, it's kind of funny how intelligent they really are and how with it they really are. So
yeah.
What
about you, Ernesto? Have any of your kids read your book?
Yes. Not only that, I have students are in the book.
That's great.
When I do a creative writing unit with my students, and who do you think my first editors were on my book? So they would write their short stories, we would exchange pages, and they would give me back feedback. And oh my gosh, there were so many horrible chapters that they helped to fix. So I owe them all. And I've had former students. I had one in particular that just comes to mind, and he's a grown man now, and I didn't know I didn't recognize him, and he just sent me his message on Instagram telling me how he says, I've never read a book that's made me cry before, and I come across one that finally broke me down, and it happens to be a children's book. And so I actually responded to him, and I'm like, oh, thank you, that's really kind of you. And then he responds to me back, but he called me Mr. C, and I was like, wait a minute, Mr. C. Yeah, it was one of my former students too. So yeah, it's been a real experience.
That's so rewarding.
Yeah.
Danielle, I don't want to leave you out of this conversation, so I'd love to ask you the same question about your whole process of writing, and then also answer the question about what did your students think of your play?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they were all in it, and it was fantastic. There were we had already a very dear friend, Carrie Vargas, we were like the two, we would get together and we did, I don't know, it was about 20 plays in roughly 10 years that we did. And finally came to the place where it was like, hey, this is what I really want to do. We're going to work together. And so there's one high school in Maricopa, Arizona, And I had them swinging from the rafters, doing the whole thing. I mean, we had about 50 people who are helping to get this thing going. So it was a giant community spirit, and we have video of it, and it's just fantastic. So yes, being with the kids, and it was just like we were just all a big family.
How long did it take you to write it? Because that, my question's kind of about the process. Like when you sit down and write, what, do you write for, all day long, for a couple hours? What do you do?
I'm an insomniac, so this is how I get most of my things done. So basically, I go probably 3 or 4 hours of what I'm trying to do. I do a giant outline at the very beginning. I had to go through. I got a very dear copy of the original book. It was it's a really, really old copy, and so I was using that one. I had to gingerly kind of like go through the pages, but I loved it so much. And I just started to sort of just skew just a little bit some of these things so that they could understand that they had to be really tough women to do what they had to do in those days. And so but I'm one of these people who kind of like dive in, and that's the only thing I'm going to do for the next 2 weeks, and then it's done.
So we've got about 5 minutes left here. And, I know that it's really quite interesting to people about how do you actually get a book published? Can some of you guys talk about what that process is like? How do you go about getting it published?
Well, actually, I kind of sat on this idea for a while, and I had first gone online, and this was about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little longer, before the whole wave of internet and online and everything became so prevalent. And there was someone at the Santa Ana, worked at the district office, who wrote a book, and she had self-published it. And I had gone online and I was going to pay to get it self-published, and I just never followed through with it. And then a couple of years back, with Amazon was just coming out, and they have Amazon publishing. And I was like, wow, it's very simple to publish a book. And I just went through there and got it published very quickly, and it just became available on Kindle. And now I'm doing a hard copy of the book, and it's actually a lot easier than you think, especially with the internet and the online stuff. So
Ernesto, your experience was a little different. You went through a publisher, didn't you?
Yeah, and the biggest difference is that, well, Bill gets to do everything himself. You have to be your editor, you have to be your publicist. I mean, you're a one-man, publishing company essentially. So my route was a little different. Mine, my students were the ones that encouraged me to try and get published, and I kind of wanted to walk them through it because my dream was really that one of my students was going to get published someday, and they were going to put me in the acknowledgement. I mean, that's really all out of it. I never foresaw this. I was at it for 14 years and I couldn't sell anything. It just wasn't happening. And then 2016 came about, the elections was going around. Again, I wanted to write something. I thought I was going to print it out, put it in PDFs, give it to the kids. But they kept trying, they were the ones helping me with it. And they're like, no, this is the best thing we've read. You got to get it published. So I sent it to my agent, who had just recently had added, and she said, no, we got to do this. And 2 weeks later, HarperCollins had an offer on the table for us, one of the largest publishers in the world. So it's like a overnight success that took 14 years.
Yeah. I want to stress to all the authors out there, you're going to get 100,000 no, and you just got to keep at it. And, one day it'll come through, and just don't ever take no for an answer. And that's with really anything in life, so.
So we have a question from one of the students, and they want to know what advice you would give to others, including your students, who are aspiring authors. That question goes to all of you.
Well, just like I said, don't ever take no for an answer. Don't get discouraged. Don't get frustrated. Just keep at it, because you're going to get 10,000 no's, not good enough, not good enough. But don't ever get discouraged. You just got to keep at it, and one day your persistence will pay through.
Danielle, what do you think? What advice would you give?
I'm gonna take it back a step, and that is to become enamored in what you want to do. If you have a dream to write something, start by doing an outline, start by drawing a picture, start by doing something, and it may take you a year, and it may take you 20 years, but then that's what has happened, to me as an adult. But like in school and in places like that, write what you love, and don't worry about whether you're spelling things right or what you're doing. It is getting the ideas on the page, and then lovingly keep a hold of those pages, because sometimes those pages were scrawled by, sixth graders and seventh graders and things like that. And then today they're in a book somewhere. So it just have fun with it and make it your baby for the whole time.
And this last question from one of our audience is asking, when do you write? When do you find the time to write? You're all full-time teachers. When are you doing that? Ernesto or Bill or whoever?
I find the time. I'm out golfing, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, a page. And you don't have to ever write it down. You write it down in your head. You could write it down on paper. You could speak it into your phone or anything, make little notes. There's always time to write. And it's not like I sit down at a table, open up a notebook, and start writing. I'm driving in my car. Oh, and I think of stuff. I'm out on the golf course, I think of stuff. I'm watching TV and I think of stuff. So you're always thinking of writing, and those thoughts then get transferred to paper or whatever, medium that you need. So.
Well, we've hit our 9 o'clock mark. I want to thank all of our authors, Bill, Ernesto, Danielle, for joining us tonight. I know it was a short time, but I really enjoyed just listening to your stories, and I'm hoping that the audience will go out and buy your books. I know I'm going to. I already actually read Ernesto's. I'm going to go buy yours, Bill, and Danielle. I'd love to get a copy of your play.
I have an extra one just for you, by the way.
Pride and Prejudice is one of my wife and my favorite movies and books.
And mine's on Kindle.
Yours is on Kindle. Awesome. So thank you all, and have a great evening and a great weekend. And thank you, audience.